Hello and welcome back to another episode of You Want to Do What with Dan and Julie. Today we have Nicole on, who is a neuroscientist or training to be one. Hi Nicole, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
All good. So do you want to tell everyone a little bit about what you're actually doing at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm actually a personal trainer. I've been one for the last 10 years, and I then decided to change. I was really fascinated with neuroscience, so I decided to do that as my degree. So I'm in my third year at the moment, looking to go into behavioural science actually afterwards. I'd like to kind of take it into the finance sector
Wow.
to help people in basically like decision making and risk taking within finance. So it's like behavioral economics, really.
That's a really interesting sort of move from personal training into sort of behavioural science, because you must, as a personal trainer, have seen a lot of the mental side effects of working out and why some people stick to it and others don't.
Yeah, to be honest, I actually feel like personal trainers should have some kind of psychology degree, if to be honest, because some of the things I hear, I'm like, am I allowed to know this? And am I qualified enough to be talking about this? But yeah, no, and you're dealing with people's psyche all of the time. You know, there's a lot more that goes into personal training than just, the actual training, like, especially if you're dealing with people who've got like body dysmorphia or have no motivation or obese. There's it's not as simple as just stop eating or just go to the gym. It's definitely a psychological thing, and I think people do have a lot of trouble around the mental health towards fitness, healthy eating, food in general. I mean, I think food is probably almost everybody's like worst enemy. um as far as I'm concerned with my clients and stuff. So I guess, I mean, I did the personal training thing because I kind of just fell into it, to be honest. I started teaching when I was 18 in a gym. Someone said there was a job going. I was like, great, I need an extra job, and I'm really active all the time, so I might as well just get paid for it. And then I came to London when I was 19 from South Africa. And basically, I knew I wanted to study, but I had to live in the country for, I think it was 3 years, but I ended up staying here for 5 anyway, before I could apply for a student loan. Mm-hmm. So that's why I did the personal training on the side. And then I thought, well, that's actually a great job to have as a student. So I went into studying at 27, 20, yeah. Oh my God, I can't even remember. So yeah, it was a little bit longer than expected, but so now I'm studying neuroscience, and yeah, like I said, I'm in my final year.
So it wasn't as much as PT led you into sort of the neuroscience thing. Have you always sort of had an interest in that, in the brain and how it works, and maybe psychology and things like that?
Yeah, exactly. I always have, and I always knew that I wanted to either go into medicine or neuroscience. I actually wanted to do medicine and intercalate neuroscience with medicine, but I didn't get into medical school. So I applied for neuroscience as a backup, and then I got into neuroscience. So yeah, no, I always knew I wanted to do it. It wasn't like personal training led me to this. It was just more like the circumstances didn't quite fit for me. It was really hard to study. And also, I don't think they have neuroscience degrees in South Africa. Nice. So it was kind of like I fell into the personal training job knowing that I wanted to do something alongside either psychology or sociology or, behavior. And that's probably why I've been inclined to go into behavioral economics or behavioral science. It doesn't have to be economics, but it does open that door, which is great. Because being a hard scientist, I think, would probably sound like my idea of hell. Working, if I'm completely honest, I'm very charismatic, and I'm quite sociable. Sociable, is that a word? Yeah.
Yeah.
Being in a lab day in and day out doing research, I just don't think would fit me. So I'd want to do something a bit more either clinical, or work in like either finance or economics. Business, and actually work with clients. I guess that would mean that my transferable skills from personal training, working with clients on a daily basis, would be able to be carried over.
I guess like you've already said, doing your PT, you feel that PTs probably should have a bit more training around, mental health. But I guess doing that really showed you that there was a need for more understanding of the brain and mental health, and neuroscience was a good path into that.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm big on synaptic plasticity. It's one of my favorite areas in
Ooh, what is that?
yeah. So basically, your brain is malleable, and for
Okay.
example, like if you it's called long-term potentiation. So if you feed a thought into the receiving neuron, so you get the presynaptic and postsynaptic neuron. If
Hmm.
the presynaptic neuron is really good at sending a message to the postsynaptic neuron, the postsynaptic neuron will make more receptors on the surface of the synapse to better receive that information. And that's called long-term potentiation. And that's how we integrate long-term memories or long-term thought patterns. And
So it's like building habits.
yes, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Exactly. And that's the same thing with negative thinking. So if you are constantly thinking negatively and you're constantly, it kind of becomes like a downward spiral, kind of like a snowball effect. The more negative you are, the more negative you're going to be, and the more negative your thoughts are. And it's the same with positive thinking. So, and it's actually been proven through long-term potentiation that is true. So the neurons actually become better at communicating with each other. It's almost like tightening a bond between them.
So we can actually see this physically in the brain. There's evidence of this happening, and well, chemically or whatever it be.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. You can look it up. It's called long-term potentiation. I mean, it goes into a lot more detail, but you can just research brain plasticity. But basically, the brain is malleable; it changes. So when you're born, you don't have you have the same amount of neurons. The only thing that changes is the synapses and the connections in the brain. So when you are learning things, you learn through somatosensation. So when you look at something, your brain goes, okay, that's shiny. Let's put that somewhere. And that's how children learn.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why it's really important for children to kind of, see the world and smell things and look at things and actually have, interaction with things. That's why there's, this is a topic in and of itself, but that's why there's a big conundrum when it comes to technology. There's a woman called Susan Greenfield, Greenwell, I can't remember. I think it's Greenfield. She's from Oxford, and she's doing a lot of neuroscience studies on the effects of technology on younger brains because you learn through looking at things, and the brain basically allocates areas for different things. And if certain things aren't getting stimulated, then the brain is going to want to be optimal. So it will just take over that. So say, for example, like I always use this as an example, but love and affection, if that isn't something that's taught as, through interactions and through experiences, that's the word I'm looking for. I do that a lot sometimes.
Sorry.
If you don't learn that through experiences, you're not going to really learn that innately. So what will happen is the brain will take over that area and it will, do something else with it. So that's why a lot of children, and this is not specific, like I don't want to say that every child that's abused becomes a psychopath, because I'm not, but that is why some people will end up becoming psychopathic, because they don't have the empathy that was taught to them innately. They can't innately feel love. Like they can maybe learn the theory of it, but they won't actually know how that feels, if that makes sense.
Because they've never learned it.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so like the brain is plastic. It changes. It can learn thought patterns, but it can but it can also unlearn those things. So that's why it's really important to make good habits and think positively, because even if it doesn't work right now, in a few months to a year, your brain will, start changing to think more positively. That's why people will come to the gym and think, oh, I just want a quick fix. But the thing is, you need to change
Long term.
what's going on long term. Exactly. So it takes months, because the brain needs to rewire itself to think this is a positive thing, or this is what I do. Some people, they'll go to the gym because they think they have to. Eventually it just becomes a thing that's part of you, but it has to be integrated.
I really like reading around this subject as well, like the psychology and neuroscience and all that. I find it really fascinating. But am I right in saying that they used to think the brain stopped becoming as malleable in your late 20s, or do you think you can still change? It doesn't matter how old you get.
Yeah, you can. I mean, it's not as easy. And actually, I'm doing an entire 6-month module on brain plasticity, so I'll probably be able to give you a better answer about that. But it's true that it is easier for children to learn, especially things like languages, because it is easier, it is more malleable, it is more plastic. But I mean, thought patterns can definitely change. This is simple things like positive thinking and like I just said, making yourself go to the gym and stuff like that. Maybe things like languages would be harder. Learning new things might be a little bit harder, but it's not impossible. It just requires a little bit more, persistence.
So is neuroscience basically the chemical and electrical understanding of how the brain learns? Is that sort of what you're studying?
Brain functions, neuroscience or brain plasticity.
Neuroscience.
How the brain functions, not just learns. I mean, there's different areas. I mean, we do things like psychiatric disorders. I don't know, you name it. A lot of things, but not just learning. But learning is one aspect of it, which I need to add is completely complex. It's so complex. We still don't really quite know how that works. People have tried to build artificial neural networks that simulate how the brain learns, but we still don't know. There's like 3 or 4 different theories as to how we actually learn information.
We still don't know a ton about the brain, do we? How it really works.
No,
we're getting better.
Yeah, but it's very complex. There's 10 to the 18 neurons. 10 to the 11 neurons in the brain. So that's a 10 with 10 zeros next to it.
Blimey.
That number, and then the connections that they make with each other sums up to about 10 to the 14. 10 to the 14, which is a lot. It doesn't sound like a big number, but I can't comprehend that. I don't even know after 1 million what comes after that.
Me too.
Once you get to 9999999 6 nines, then you get a billion. But then after that, my brain's just like, no.
So at university, so what's the sort of process for you? What kind of modules are you doing in neuroscience? Can you specialize in certain areas? How does it work?
Yeah, so first year was pretty basic. It was a lot of physiology, pharmacology, and then like an introduction to neuroscience and anatomy of the brain. Really interesting, but it was very broad. Like I shouldn't say this, but I hated the physiology part of it. We were doing like heart and lungs, which is great. I wanted to be a doctor anyway, but I was like, I'm not really here to study that. But at the same time, you have to know all of those things. But then second year got a little bit more specific, and now third year is where it really becomes really specific. So that's why I chose modules like brain plasticity. That was an optional module. I think you had 2 mandatory modules, whereas normally you have 4 or 5, and then 2 optionals, whereas now you have like 4 optionals and the rest are mandatory. So the optionals are brain plasticity. That should be great. Really interested. Really complex though. I'm already going a little bit of anxiety towards that. I've started and it's, oh my god, it is so complex. There's so many different aspects to it. And I'm doing something called brain and behavior. So things like love, I don't know what else. I can't think of the top of my head.
So emotions, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. So there was another one called psychiatric disorders, which I thought was great. But then I spoke to somebody who'd done that. And basically, we studied Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Huntington's in first year and second year. And then in third year, psychiatric disorders is basically just a more in-depth version of that. So I kind of thought it's great. I'd like to know more in depth about it, but I've already done it for 2 years.
Yeah.
Not saying I know everything, but it was more like, I'm a bit bored of this now. It'd be great to do something else and then explore that area. And then if I like it more or less than psychiatric disorders, and I can go back to that and specialize in that in my master's potentially, depending on whether I want to stay there. But it's nice to explore different avenues so that I would know what to do in my master's.
And what kind of careers can you take neuroscience into?
Oh goodness, a lot. I mean, you could go into so basically you get pure scientists, which are your researchers. Then you get clinical scientists. So those are the guys. So those are normally doctors. but you can call neuroscience where you work as a neuroscientist, not a doctor, but with patients. So you could potentially be working in a hospital where you're monitoring like the ECGs in a brain surgery, for example, or you could go into imaging. So you'd work alongside radiographers and doctors in diagnosing.
Almost like a consultant.
Yeah, so you're diagnosing the imaging, the image, the CT scans. Yeah. Not only CT scans, but that's an example. You could go into, the research side is huge. I mean, you could take it from any angle. You could go into neuropsychology. You could go into psychedelics. You could go into pure psychology, experimental psychology, or stay in neuroscience. You could do Alzheimer's research, dementia. I mean, you name it. Any kind of research you think you'd want to do, you could go into. Because there's so much research around neuroscience at the moment. You could go into behavioural stuff, if whether you wanted to do research or apply it. So like what I'm doing is I'm taking it to like I said, economical side of things. So it's applying neuroscience to economics. They call it neuroeconomics.
Wow.
It's more science behind how we take risks and how we make decisions, especially for people who are working with like big numbers and the stress involved with that, but also like people who do stocks. It's like, I know they calculated risks, but what is the brain thinking when they're going, yeah, you know what, I'm going to bet on that. So, I mean, I don't know the number that people bet on when they're doing stocks. I mean, bet's probably not the right word.
It probably is, to be honest.
Yeah,
I guess it is in a way.
Yeah.
I used to have a client who was in stock shares or stock trading, stock brokering, and I was always like, don't you ever work, mate? Like, you're literally always on like a cycle tour or at the gym or chilling. And he's like, yeah, when I need a bit of money and I see I'm running out, then I go, okay, I'll go online and I'll trade a couple things, and then I'm like, oh, isn't that a bit, risky? And he's like, yeah, of course, but I know what I'm doing. It's a calculated risk.
Yeah, I used to work in insurance in the city, and they always said that it's not so much now, but it used to be just a bit of a calculated kind of bit of a bet, bit of a wager. It might happen, it might not happen, kind of thing.
I'm an engineer and I do the same thing. No, I don't.
My brother's an aeronautical engineer. I'll have to take that up with him.
So you mentioned you want to do your master's in sort of neuroeconomics. And what kind of what's your average day going to be doing that? I guess neuroscience, like you said, is a lot of research, so it will apply to a lot of jobs that people might get with a neuroscience degree.
Well, I'm not quite sure. I have a friend who's in the industry. He's a behavioural scientist. And I was chatting to him about it, and that's kind of what prompted me to go that way, because I would like to, if I did stay into pure neuroscience, I'd have to do something clinical. But this tickles my fancy because I get to work with people, and I get to work with high asset clients, which I don't know, kind of makes me feel like thrilled. It's like, as well, I'm also doing a calculated risk working with people like that.
You are, yes.
Yeah. Well, I thought it would be a bit more exciting. You can put into practice what people are thinking when they're using the brain in that department, like finances. So you're aiding them in decision making and risk taking, kind of like supporting them in whether it's a good risk or a bad risk, or if they're feeling anxious about something, then you could do it from a psychological side of things, where you're either looking at previous research. There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of statistics when it comes to like behavioral science. You're doing a lot of statistical analyses on people's behavior, and a little bit of research as well. But yeah, it's more like finding out ways to improve businesses and finding out ways that you can improve the person who is going to be front on in the businesses, if that makes sense.
And so obviously you're being in your third year, you've probably got a dissertation towards the end of the year. Have you thought about that and what you might do, bring in your behavioural science interests?
Yeah, they actually haven't released our topics yet. They normally release them in the last year of second year, but because of COVID, everything just went a little bit ping-tong, to be honest. I mean, we did our exams for second year online in the last term, which was a bit strange because I was doing it from the house. So yeah, I don't know. I'd like to do something in behavior if possible, but I also really love pharmacology. The only trouble with pharmacology is I'm not very good at it. I'd love to do something with like psychedelics and, going into the pharmacology of how drugs work. I don't know if you guys listen to my drug podcast, but I just don't know if I'm good enough for pharmacology, to be honest. I didn't do very well in my second year exams. I don't know if that was due to stress or, maybe I need to spend a little bit more time on it. But
that's a really interesting sort of area though, because I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast a few days ago, and he talks about this a lot actually, sort of the effects of psychedelics on patients with certain neurological disorders and how it can positively affect them.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I'm a huge, I would love to get into that somehow, just so that I have a bit more of a leg to stand on. But I've been doing a lot of research and reading up around that, and it's. I mean, LSD was originally synthesized for psychiatric disorders like anxiety and PTSD disorder, depression. But then it kind of, actually, Albert Hofmann, the guy who was synthesizing.
That's it. Yeah, I can't remember his name.
He accidentally ingested some and then was like, wow, this is great.
Because then didn't he set up a chemistry lab in his garage with his wife, and they just basically created whatever they could and just spent the years trying it out?
I'm not sure. No, I don't know if that's
not him.
I know he was an actual scientist. So
no, he was. Yeah,
you're crossing his name, Jules. You're making his name bad. Come on.
No, there was I can't remember his name, but there was a scientist, a doctorate, who basically during the 60s just created all these like psychedelic drugs and the effects and where he thought they could then be used in different
I'll have to double check that. I know Hoffman started doing that in the 40s. He actually started in the 20s, but then it only kind of picked up traction in the 40s. So I mean, it very well could be, I wouldn't even be surprised. I mean, he started not even microdosing, he actually started dosing it every day because such a great time. And then it just picked up loads of traction in the 60s when, in the music scene and the whole hippie vibe, which unfortunately then it got classed as a class A drug when it doesn't have detrimental effects like cocaine, heroin, crack.
That's it. There's two sides to this, isn't there, really, the whole drug conversation. There are drugs that destroy people's lives because, they get addicted and it ruins their lives. And then there's the other side where it can be used to help people with neurological disorders. So it's a difficult balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that was the whole debate on the podcast was, should we be legalizing therapeutic drugs and, keeping the ones that aren't therapeutic illegal? But the argument is that if you have a look at a chart, there's a guy called David Nutt. He's basically like the godfather of psychedelics, but basically he researched alongside other scientists what the most detrimental drugs are, and alcohol, and this was based on a harm done to the person as well as to others. And the harm scale for alcohol was the highest. It was above heroin, and it was above.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. And LSD and psilocybin, so mushrooms, and MDMA were at the bottom of the list.
I guess that comes from alcohol is a huge industry that makes billions of dollars in tax.
It's been,
they're not going to get rid of it.
So, I mean, it's a huge economical problem here. It's, I mean, how are you going to take alcohol away? It's such a complex approach to, I don't know. I don't even know. I can't even imagine a world where people would be okay with that.
No, I don't think they would be.
Exactly. But alcohol is so bad for you. I mean, I know I don't drink that much, and obviously I do drink, but it is really bad for you. And, and I always think, like, I wake up in the morning and I feel terrible. Like, why are we putting this stuff in our bodies? And I don't even do it that often. There are people who do it every day. There are people who do it every weekend. And it's so sociable. Like, it's so socially accepted. And it's like, if you, I don't know, if that was illegal, you would see why. When you wake up with a terrible hangover, I think the only difference between alcohol and maybe other drugs is that you can limit yourself to one or two. You can just say, oh, I'll just go out for 1 pint and then go home, because, you're able to do that. And the effects come on a lot slower than, say, if you had to take heroin. I mean, I've never taken heroin, so I can't tell you out of experience. But I'm imagining that you're not going to go and do I'll just do a little bit of heroin.
That's a very good point. Alcohol you can moderate yourself, whereas drugs, once you've had a little bit, I'd imagine it's a quick snowball effect.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you're not doing it, in an addictive basis, I'm sure that you're not going in for a little bit. You're going in for the long haul, for that day at least. Yeah,
I'm personally, obviously, I don't do any sort of. I drink alcohol, but no drugs of any sort.
Yeah.
But the thing that interests me is the how we could use these drugs to actually help people with disorders. That's the main thing that interests me.
Well, exactly. And this is the thing. There are a lot of researchers in England. There are a lot of researchers in America who are finding really good results to their research. The only trouble now is trying to find a way to legalize it, because it's still considered a drug.
Yeah.
But I know there's loads of stuff that, points to the direction that it is good. And also they don't really have any recorded side effects or detrimental consequences. But I say that we also don't have enough of the research, so the data could be biased.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Yeah. So when you go into after you finished uni and sort of started working, and your experiences already, what kind of personality traits would benefit somebody working within neuroscience?
I mean, to be honest, if you'd asked me this before I went into neuroscience, I would have said someone who was really not boring, because that's not. People don't believe me when I say that I'm a neuroscientist. I think I'm a little bit of a buffoon, if it makes sense. I'm really bubbly. Like, my Instagram is really colorful, and people are always like, "Oh, like I don't," not to be like disrespectful towards me, but they're always like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to be a scientist." Like, maybe working. I don't know.
Yeah, you're not the typical person you expect to be a scientist, but that's a good thing, changing sort of, personas.
Exactly. And like, I don't think I look like a nerd, to be quite honest. I still don't consider myself one. I always think I'm the type of person who actually has to study really hard to get the grades, whereas like some people it comes naturally. But you do have to have a lot of analytical thinking, obviously. With that being said, I'm not great at maths. I'm not bad, obviously, but I'm not great at maths. So that's,
don't worry, join the club. I'm awful.
Yeah, so I think people think that like scientists have to be really good at maths or really good at like physics, and like I love all those things, but I'm not great at them. I'm really good at biology and neuroscience, obviously.
You'd hope.
Yeah, exactly. Good to know. So yeah, I guess there is an analytical side of thinking that is required, because you have to deal with data, you have to deal with data sets, you have to deal with decision making that is a little bit more abstract in your reasoning than if you were creative, or do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
Even like maybe I don't know zoology, but I think no, actually they're pretty analytical as well.
We had one. We had a zoologist on yesterday actually, and she was saying that analytics are a big part of it.
Something she didn't actually realise she was going to be doing was analysing all this data.
I mean, I love-hate statistics. I have a love-hate relationship with them, but when it clicks, it's like a puzzle piece. I feel like Sherlock Holmes, mate. It's so cool. But yeah, no, I guess you have to know, you have to be kind of, I'm a very logical thinker. Like I do get emotional, obviously, but I'm very good at kind of being like, okay, logic needs to kick in. Yeah. What are we going to do about the situation? So I guess, logical thinking, strategic, I suppose, but you can apply that to business. So
yeah, very true.
But yeah, I'm not creative at all. I mean, I am in my head, and I dance and I do yoga, but I'm so bad at drawing. So I don't know, because there are people on my course that are really good at drawing. One of my friends does like neuroscience paintings on the side, and
wow, that's cool.
I think that kind of mold is slowly starting to kind of like ripple away when it comes to what place you fit into in the world, if that makes sense.
I agree. I definitely
kind of go against all of the parameters that define whether I should be a neuroscientist or not. yeah, because yeah, I wouldn't, if I met me, I probably wouldn't say you're going to be a neuroscientist. Neuroscientist, and I can see why people are shocked when I say that.
And what are some of the biggest positives of the industry you can see, you know, going forward? You're spending time helping people could be one.
Well, it's a very unknown territory when it comes to neuroscience. There's always something to research. You know, it's not like well, I can't think of an example, but you're always going to have work, because it's a very yeah, like I said, unexplored area.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be known still, which is great. Also very scary, because, you know, how do you start looking for things that aren't there? But yeah, so
it's quite cool. You're a bit like an explorer, going out and finding these new things.
Yeah, so I think that's great. Like, it's still a very new not subject, but new industry, a new kind of like avenue to explore. So that's great. I'm very excited about the whole psychedelic movement. I'm going to be following that for, you know, years to come, because I think that is revolutionary. So yeah, I think it has space to like make some real changes in the world, because, you know, especially in the world where we're living in now, where we're very aware of mental health. We're very aware of how the brain functions, whereas before we didn't really think much about it. We just kind of thought, oh, okay, well, this is what we do, and we don't talk about mental health, you know, whatever. Whereas now we're very much like, no, if you do this when you're a child, it has that impact. If you're like this, it's because of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's great. I think mental health and the psychology side of neuroscience is big, but also, yeah, neuroscience in itself. So that's one big positive. The second positive is, I don't know, I guess it is creative. It could be fun. You know, if you found what you really wanted to do. You know, I do with the behavioral side, but if I had to stay in neuroscience, I guess I'd go into psychedelics. But if you don't know what you want to do, I think that could be quite scary, because there's so much you can do in neuroscience, and it's a bit like treading in like the open waters and trying to find something. But I mean, I guess you can look at it both ways, both a positive and a negative, that there's just so much to go into.
What about some of the less favorable sides of the industry?
I think research could be quite boring. I think so. If you're not brave enough to take on your own research, you're always going to be working for someone else's research, and then potentially aiding them in something, which would be great, because you're aiding someone in, you know, life-changing discovery. But it might not ever be your work. You know, you can be a lab technician or a research associate and just always work under somebody else. So I think that there is a level of creativity and initiative that needs to be taken on in that respect, because, yeah. But I mean, I think you'll always have a job, which is great.
That's a bonus.
Yeah. I think I also say that, but research is hard. Research is hard. You have to get funding. You have to convince the government why they need to pay you to do this. You need to convince people why you want to poke into their brains. And yeah.
So we like to talk a little bit about sort of what people could expect to earn when they're in the industry. It's a little bit unfair maybe to ask you, but from your sort of experience and people you know of, let us know if these figures sort of sound right. And coming out of university, you could look at maybe 25 up to possibly 30. And then salaries really sort of, at the moment, it looks like can go up to sort of 60,000 maybe, depending on the right sort of job you're in.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like, if you're going to do, you know, if you're going to be a lab assistant or a lab associate, lab technician, I think you probably will not earn more than about 35K a year. After a few years, you'll start on 25. But, you know, you could go into teaching. So you could you could become a professor. I'm pretty sure you have to have a master's for that, though. You know, you get paid pretty well doing that. I don't know what the numbers are. I think it's around probably, you know, starting from 50 upwards. With the behavioral stuff, which I'm going into, I'm hoping to go into a consulting side. So you can earn upwards of 60K, potentially more.
Yeah.
My aim is to eventually branch out and go into a consulting side of things and work with private clients. So potentially like high asset clients on a one-to-one basis on either coaching plus, you know, behavioral support.
So is that your sort of idea of how you're planning to progress through the industry?
Yeah, I think if I could be the next Tony Robbins, I'm kidding. But yeah, like I know it sounds crazy, but it doesn't sound crazy, but it sounds a bit like obnoxious. But if I can't be a doctor, then I have to be rich.
Yeah, fair. That's a good goal to have.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I couldn't get into med school, but it's okay. I'll make some money. Well, no, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and psychologist, you could go into neuropsychology and you could work, I think band one psychologists start on about 30 grand, and then it goes up to about, over 100 if you're a lead psychologist in a firm.
Yeah.
You could even go private. There's a lot of private psychologists. I mean, especially if you're going to be working in like London, Kensington.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's so many routes and so many different areas and subjects, and the potential to earn a really good salary as well.
Exactly. That's the thing. But I think as a pure scientist, I don't think there's much money in that, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were going to stay in research, if you, like if you went into, say, psychedelic research, I don't know. I mean, I guess the guys that are like head of research at Imperial, for example, I'm pretty sure they're earning a lot of money, but I don't know underneath that what the salaries would be. But I know that it's not, like, I know if you go into neuroscience with an undergraduate degree, you won't be earning a lot of money. If you've got a master's, it could look better for you. But it depends, like I said, which route you go. You could go, I mean, finance, you're always going to make money in finance, and you're always going to make money in psychology. And if you go into like a clinical side, you could potentially even do your master's or graduate medical degree and then come in from a psychiatric point of view. But then that requires more studying. So yeah, it really just depends on which direction you go.
Well, having done, your first few years at university and experience what it could potentially be like, would you still choose the course now?
Yes. I don't know. Tough one. Depends. Yes, because I would like to do the behavioural economics, but I'm glad that I have the neuroscience underneath me, because I think if I didn't do that, then I thought, maybe I should have done just economics and then done behavioural on top of that. But actually, I think having the neuroscience as a foundation is really like set up a good structure for my learning from here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would stick to it. I would stick to what I chose.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Nicole. It's been really fascinating to talk to you about all your experiences so far, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Good luck with your last year at university and your masters. And where can people find you on social media?
So it's Nicole's Neuroscience with an S, because people always leave out the S. So it's, Nicole's Neuroscience. So I'm trying to do like an educational Instagram, although sometimes my private life does get involved.
We'll be sure to link it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.